Hey, thanks for joining me. Hope you're doing well. Far north, legends and mythology around the world have spoken of an ancient and sacred land. The ancient histories of practically all the major nations and religions on Earth mention a time when mankind lived in a temperate, sacred paradise at the North Pole. And as I've been describing in my videos, this land is holy and imperishable, able to be penetrated only by those who have strong will of the heart and mind. The book The Ancient Wisdom summarizes this land, in which author Jeffrey Ashe writes, "In the far north, there is a high and paradisal place, peopled by an assembly of beings of superhuman longevity and wisdom. This is the place where Earth rises to join the celestial center, the pole of heaven." In Greek mythology, the Hyperboreans were a race of giants who lived beyond the north wind. This land was supposed to be perfect, where there was no war or toil, an abundance of food, and peopled by a peaceful race. The ancient Scythians, a branch of the Vedic peoples who roamed the northwestern Asian steppe, told of a wonderful place similar to Hyperborea that lay far to the north. Beyond what they called the Riphean Mountains lay a beautiful country, warm and sheltered from the icy winds outside, where the sun rose and set only once a year, as it does within the Arctic Circle. There, a happy race lived in parklands full of divine music and lush vegetation. In Hindu and Buddhist traditions, Shambhala is a mythical kingdom of spiritual bliss, where the gods and demigods reside. The Tibetan Bon tradition speaks of a closely related land called Toxic Olmo Lung Ring. The world axis, or axis mundi, is associated with the center of Shambhala. In Buddhist mythology, Mount Sumeru, or simply Meru, has its roots in hell and its summit in heaven, bridging all of the Earth's dimensions. Like Hyperborea, scholars and authors have regularly placed Shambhala at the North Pole. This would make sense given the flat Earth model, since in most Asian cosmology, Mount Meru stood at the center of the universe. If Mount Meru is at the center of Shambhala, then this would make the surrounding lands, the four-island continent, at the center of our own stationary realm. Gottfried de Puricher, in Fountain Source of Occultism, writes, "This spot is the summit of what in the Hindu Puranas is called Shveta Dvipa, Mount Meru, or Sumeru. It is the North Pole of the Earth. It is the mystical North Pole." In Nicholas Roerich's Shambhala in Search of the New Era, Shambhala was described by the lamas he spoke with as a far-off valley, hidden in the midst of high mountains, with hot springs and rich vegetation. "Uncountable are the inhabitants of Shambhala," he wrote. "Numerous are the splendid new forces and achievements which are being prepared there for humanity." The Japanese have their own analog of Shambhala, which they have named Island of the Congealed Drop. The Shambhalan axis mundi of Mount Meru is accordingly named Mount Shumasen. In Paradise Found, William Warren writes, "This island was the Japanese Eden. Here originated the human race. Its name was Onogorahima, the Island of the Congealed Drop. The island must have been situated at the pole of the Earth. The island formed by the congealed drops was once at the North Pole." One of Warren's largest correlations was that of the Garden of Eden's Tree of Life with other mythological world trees, strongly suggesting that all cultures were describing the same axis and locating this pillar in the Arctic. So many cultures had a world axis, and oftentimes it was a world tree located at the center of their cosmology. We could absolutely draw comparisons to Mount Meru. If anywhere in the temple of nature there was to be an altar, it could only be here. That it was here finds a fresh and unexpected confirmation in the singular agreement of many ancient religions and mythologies in associating their paradise tree with the axis of the world, or otherwise, locating it at the Arctic pole of the Earth. The biblical Garden of Eden is said to contain 4 central rivers which parted from one main source, and a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted, and became into 4 heads. Interestingly, In 1595, Gerhard Mercator, the renowned 16th century cartographer, drew the four-continent system at the Arctic, divided by 4 rivers, complete with the Rubas Nigra at the center, a mountain of pure magnetic stone. Mercator describes this land in a 1577 letter to John Dee. In the midst of the 4 countries is a whirlpool, into which there empty these 4 indrawing seas, which divide the north. Right under the pole there lies a bare rock in the midst of the sea. Its circumference is almost 33 French miles, and it is all of magnetic stone. The Vedics called the center land Aryavarsha, or Paradisha, original home of the Vedas. René Guénon, in The King of the World, writes, according to the Vedas text and the Persian Avesta, Paradisha was literally located in the sense of the word at the pole. The ancient Hebrew name for Paradisha was Pardes. Pardes in Hebrew is often translated as meaning orchard or garden, bringing one to ask, is the so-called Arctic home of the Aryans, Paradisha, referring to the same land as the Bible's Garden of Eden? The Smoky God recites the true account of Olaf Jansen, who actually sailed into Eden with his father in the mid-1800s. It's written, my father was an ardent believer in Odin and Thor, and had frequently told me they were gods who came from far beyond the north wind. There was a tradition, my father explained, that still farther northward was a land more beautiful than any that mortal man had ever known, and that it was inhabited by the Chosen. One day, he turned to me and asked, my son, are you willing to go with me and explore, to go far beyond where man has ever ventured? I answered affirmatively. Very well, he replied. May the god Odin protect us. And quickly adjusting the sails, he glanced at our compass, turned the prow in due northerly direction through an open channel, and our voyage had begun. Upon entering this land, it's written, the bank of the river, covered with mammoth trees, rose up several hundred feet in beautiful fashion. We seemed to be on the edge of some primeval forest that doubtless stretched far inland. The city we had reached was called Jehu. The houses were large and beautifully constructed, and quite uniform in appearance, yet without sameness. The principal occupation of the people appeared to be agriculture. The hillsides were covered with vineyards, while the valleys were devoted to the growing of grain. I never saw such a display of gold. The door casings were inlaid, and the tables were veneered with sheetings of gold. Domes of the public buildings were of gold. It was used most generously in the finishings of the great temples of music. Vegetation grew in lavish exuberance, and fruit of all kind possessed the most delicate flavor. Clusters of grapes, 4 and 5 feet in length, each grape as large as an orange, and apples larger than a man's head, typified the wonderful growth of all things on the inside of the earth. The great redwood trees of California would be considered mere underbrush compared with the giant forest trees extending for miles and miles in all directions. Olaf and his father had passed Franz Josef Land on the way, so given the 4-continent system, it's quite obvious that the land they were in was the southern continent, Jambudvipa, which would be closest to where they sailed. This is known as the island which humans inhabit. Perhaps this means that Jambudvipa is the island in which humans usually come to on their way from the outer lands into paradise. The North Seal project is leaving the outer lands next July in order to pave the way to what we believe to be our sacred homeland. We intend to go to the same land as Olaf and his father, Jambudvipa, through North Greenland, documenting everything involving the trip's preparations and live streaming what we can.
Hey guys, it's Andreas here from the North Seal Project, and if you like what we're doing right now with our videos and our Indiegogo campaign, please consider checking out our Indiegogo campaign website in the description box below or in the pinned comment. Thanks for your support and see you soon.